What if the decision that ruins your future is not the wrong decision, but the one you keep refusing to make? How many opportunities have you quietly lost while waiting to feel certain, confident, or completely ready? Most people believe that hesitation protects them from regret, but sometimes hesitation becomes the regret. Daniel was 28 years old, and from the outside, his life appeared stable. He had a respectable office job, paid his bills on time, answered every message politely, and rarely caused anyone concern. But every morning, as he sat beneath the white lights of the same crowded office, a quiet thought followed him. This was never supposed to be my whole life. Daniel had studied architecture because he loved imagining places that made people feel welcome. At university, he filled notebooks with community gardens, libraries, public courtyards, and small homes built around sunlight. His teachers told him that he noticed details other students ignored. But after graduating, Daniel accepted a temporary administrative job while preparing his portfolio. The temporary job lasted 1 year, then 3, then 5. He never stopped saying that he would return to design. He simply kept moving the date. Every few months, Daniel found a new opportunity. He would read the requirements, imagine a better future, and begin preparing. Then the questions would start. What if my work is not good enough? What if I leave this job and fail? What if everyone realizes I was never talented? He would adjust one drawing, rewrite one paragraph, reorganize the portfolio, and promise to submit it the following day. Then the deadline would pass. Daniel called it preparation. Deep inside, he knew it was fear wearing professional clothes. One Thursday afternoon, his former classmate Claire called him. She had found a 12-month fellowship for designers who wanted to restore abandoned public buildings. Daniel, this is exactly the work you used to talk about, she said. The application closes tomorrow night. Daniel opened the listing before she finished speaking. The fellowship involved restoring an old railway station into a community space. His heart moved before his mind could stop it. I'll apply, he said. Claire became quiet. Do you mean that? Or do you mean you'll almost apply? The question hurt because it was honest. Daniel promised her he would submit everything by Friday evening. He worked late into the night. By Friday afternoon, his portfolio was finished. By 6 o'clock, his application form was complete. Only one button remained. Submit. Daniel stared at it. He noticed a sentence he could improve, then a drawing that might look outdated, then a paragraph that sounded too confident. He edited until the office emptied. He edited while the rain began striking the windows. He edited until the building's security guard told him it was closing. The application deadline was midnight. Daniel still had time, but his internet connection at home had been unreliable all week. He packed his laptop and rushed toward the railway station, planning to submit the application during the journey. When he reached the platform, the departure bell was ringing. The last train home stood with its doors open. Daniel could have boarded, but he stopped beneath the station lights to adjust one final image. The doors closed. The train moved away. Daniel looked at the empty tracks, then at his laptop. The upload had failed. Rain blew beneath the station roof, and the next train would not arrive until morning. At the far end of the platform, a single yellow lamp glowed inside an old waiting room that Daniel had never noticed before. He carried his bag toward it and found an elderly man cleaning the glass of a large wooden destination board. The man wore a dark brown coat, a beige scarf, and held a polished cane against the wall. "The trains stopped using that board years ago," Daniel said. The old man looked over his shoulder. "That is true, but old things can still remind us where we failed to go." Daniel was too tired to understand. He sat on a wooden bench and opened his laptop again. The old man watched the loading circle spin across the screen. "Did you miss your train because of that?" he asked. Daniel sighed. "I was trying to make something perfect." The man smiled gently. "And did you?" Daniel looked at the failed upload message. "No." The old man returned to the board. Its faded rows displayed the names of towns Daniel had never visited. Beside each destination was a departure time that had passed decades earlier. "I'm Arthur," the man said. "I looked after this station before the city forgot it." Daniel introduced himself and explained the fellowship, the deadline, and the application he still could not bring himself to submit. Arthur listened without interrupting. When Daniel finished, Arthur pointed to the destination board. "Which of those trains was the correct one?" Daniel frowned. "Correct for whom?" "Oh, exactly." Arthur slowly ran his hand across the faded names. Every day people stood beneath this board asking where each train would take them. They wanted guarantees. They wanted to know whether the new town would welcome them, whether the job would last, whether the person waiting there still loved them. But the board could never answer those questions. It could only tell them when the train would leave. Daniel closed his laptop. Choosing without knowing everything seems reckless. Arthur nodded. "Sometimes it is, but refusing every uncertain road is not safety. It is simply another decision, one that keeps choosing the same life for you." Daniel looked toward the empty tracks. "What if I choose badly?" Arthur sat beside him. "Then you learn from a real road instead of spending your life imagining 100 roads you never walked." Daniel wanted to believe him, but fear remained. "You make it sound easy." Arthur's eyes lowered. "No, I know it is not easy." For several seconds, rain filled the silence. Then Arthur reached into the inside pocket of his coat and removed an old train ticket, softened by age and folded through the middle. The date printed on it was almost 30 years old. "My son and I argued," Arthur said. "He moved north and asked me to visit. I bought this ticket, but on the morning of the journey, I decided I needed more time. I wanted to find the perfect words before I faced him. I told myself I would take the next train." Arthur turned the ticket over in his fingers. "There was an accident 3 days later. There was no next train." Daniel did not know what to say. Arthur was not crying, but his hand tightened around the ticket. "For years I blamed the argument," Arthur continued. "But the argument was not the final thing between us. My delay was. I waited to feel ready for a conversation that never needed perfect words. It only needed me to arrive." The station suddenly felt larger and emptier. Daniel looked at the application on his screen. Compared with Arthur's loss, rejection seemed small, but Arthur seemed to understand his thought. "Do not misunderstand me," he said. "Every decision is not equally important, and movement is not always wisdom. But when the only thing stopping you is fear of being imperfect, waiting will not make you braver. It will only make fear more experienced." Daniel checked the time. 11:42. The internet signal appeared for 1 second and vanished again. Arthur pointed toward a narrow office behind the waiting room. "There is an old wired connection inside. The railway stopped using it, but apparently nobody told the internet." For the first time that evening, Daniel laughed. He entered the office, connected his laptop, and opened an application. Immediately, he noticed another sentence he wanted to change. His hand moved toward the keyboard. Then he looked through the doorway. Arthur stood beneath the destination board, holding the ticket he had never used. Daniel took a slow breath. He whispered, "This does not have to be perfect. It only has to leave the station." At 11:47, he pressed submit. Nothing dramatic happened. There was no music, no sudden confidence, no feeling that his future had been secured. A small confirmation message appeared on the screen. Daniel expected relief, but what he felt was unfamiliar. Exposure. His work was now somewhere he could no longer protect it from judgment. Arthur entered the office. "How does courage feel?" he asked. Daniel gave a nervous smile. "Mostly uncomfortable." Arthur nodded. "That is how you know it is courage and not confidence." 2 weeks later, Daniel received an email from the fellowship committee. His application had been rejected. He read the message 3 times. The old voice returned immediately. "You were right to be afraid. Your work was never good enough." Daniel almost deleted his portfolio. He almost ignored Claire's call. He almost returned to the safe silence he knew so well. But at the bottom of the rejection email was one sentence from the program director, "Mr. Hale, your ideas show empathy, but your portfolio hides them beneath too much explanation. Simplify, develop the station concept, and apply again." Daniel stared at the message. Rejection had not destroyed him. It had given him information. That evening, he returned to the station. Arthur was repairing a small clock above the waiting room door. "They said no," Daniel told him. Arthur climbed down carefully. "And are you still here?" "Yes." Then no was not the end. It was an answer. Daniel showed him the feedback. Arthur read it and smiled. A real answer from a real road. Over the next several months, Daniel changed his relationship with uncertainty. He did not suddenly become fearless. He submitted work while afraid. He asked questions while embarrassed. He showed unfinished ideas to Claire before he could polish the life out of them. Some opportunities still failed. One interview went badly. A local design competition placed him 7th. A proposal he loved received no response at all. But every result taught him something that imagination never had. He discovered that rejection lasted for days, while regret had lasted for years. He discovered that mistakes could be corrected, but missed departures could not always be recovered. Most importantly, he discovered that confidence was not permission to begin. Confidence was the memory of having begun before and survived. The following year, the fellowship opened again. Daniel submitted his application 6 days before the deadline. This time, his portfolio was shorter, clearer, and more honest. His main proposal was the restoration of an abandoned railway station into a library, workshop, and community garden. During the interview, Mr. Hale asked why the project mattered to him. Daniel looked at the sketch of the waiting room and answered, "Because too many people spend their lives waiting in places that were meant for departure." 3 days later, Daniel was accepted. He found Arthur at the old station, seated beneath the destination board. Daniel handed him the letter. Arthur read it slowly, then placed one hand on Daniel's shoulder. "You took the train," he said. Daniel shook his head. "I think I finally stopped asking where it would end." Years passed. Daniel became known not for creating the tallest or most expensive buildings, but for restoring forgotten places. He designed libraries inside old factories, gardens beside hospitals, and warm public rooms where lonely people could sit without being expected to buy anything. His work did not come from certainty. It came from paying attention while moving. Arthur grew older, and his visits to the station became less frequent. Before his health declined, Daniel asked him for permission to preserve the old destination board in the restored building. Arthur agreed on one condition: the unused ticket must be placed behind the glass beside it. "Not as a symbol of failure," Arthur said, "but as proof that one missed departure can still teach someone else to board." When the restoration was completed, the station reopened as a community library and learning center. Children read beneath the old clock. Students worked around long wooden tables. Elderly neighbors drank tea where passengers once waited in silence. Arthur attended the opening with Daniel beside him. Above the entrance hung the restored destination board. Behind a small section of glass rested Arthur's faded ticket. Beneath it, Daniel had placed a simple brass plaque: "You do not discover the road by waiting at the station." Arthur read the words and smiled. Daniel looked around at the crowded room and realized that the application he once considered imperfect had not merely changed his career. It had changed what he believed courage was. Courage was not knowing that everything would work. Courage was refusing to let fear make every decision. Perhaps you are standing at a station of your own right now. Maybe there is an application you keep editing, a conversation you keep postponing, a skill you keep planning to learn, or a life you keep promising to begin when you feel more confident. Preparation matters. Thoughtful decisions matter. But there comes a moment when more thinking stops protecting you and starts imprisoning you. Ask yourself one honest question: what would I do next if I did not need a guarantee? You do not have to change your whole life tonight. You do not have to know the final destination. Choose one honest next step. Send the message, submit the work, make the call, begin the first page. Confidence may not meet you at the station. It may be waiting somewhere along the road. And remember, the wrong road can teach you where to turn, but a platform cannot teach you where you might have gone. If this story helped you recognize a decision you have been delaying, share that next step in the comments, and subscribe to Second Wind Tales for more emotional stories about courage, wisdom, and becoming the person you were meant to be.